So inflation is the path that all politicians have chosen over austerity. All of them have chosen that. So yes, I do see, and even with the lying metrics, the bottom line is if no one wants to hold dollars or treasuries anymore, we haven't even begun to see what inflation looks like. But with all else being equal and everything being balanced, no one's talking about all of these liabilities that have to be paid for in an environment where our treasury sales are by the traditional countries that owned our treasuries are falling by the wayside. We're supposed to believe that the United Kingdom and Ireland and the Cayman Islands really are going to hold our treasuries and buy that many. The United Kingdom is a broke country buying the debt of an even more broke country, us. Jim Willey, someone who I respect a lot, says that the Fed's paying them under the table to buy our treasuries to keep the system going. Maybe true, maybe not, don't know. But any way you look at it, every politician and every system since the Roman times have chosen inflation over austerity. Inflation will come roaring back, and it's higher than we are led to believe.
Hey guys, welcome back to Capitalcosm. Today I'm back with Andy Schectman, channel favorite. Andy, thanks for coming back on.
Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for having me, Danny. I appreciate it, brother.
As always, guys, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode with Andy and I. Andy is a channel regular, as well as the fact that we're publishing episodes just about daily now, 5 to 6 times a week. So it kind of behooves you not to hit the subscribe button. You might miss an episode, so hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you don't miss an episode. With that said, Andy, it's been It's been a week since you've last been on. Lots of things have happened in the economy. Gold is at an all-time high at the time of this recording. What are some macro key points that you see out there that you want to talk about?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, it's very interesting. Gold is at all-time highs with virtually no media fanfare. That's a big deal, of course. And as far as macro points, I mean, look, I think the bottom line here is that it's we're hearing more and more and more and more about inflation and how that impacts things. And I think the macro trend here is that this is a currency that is being eviscerated in value to the tune of $100,000 of debt per second. And what we are being told by the mainstream is not true. That's the bottom line, is that the mainstream is trying to create villains, and the mainstream lies, as does the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'll give you one example. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, they should just take the L out of the BLS and call it the BS, because we are told that tomorrow, on Wednesday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics will downward revise jobs for April 2023 to March of 2024 by up to 1 million jobs. That means that all of the beat expectations recorded in the past year will have turned out to be misses expectations. And the job market is in far worse shape than the administration would admit. It's the exact same thing about the way that they calculate inflation. If steak is too expensive, they take it out and put ground beef in. Coffee was up 80% last year, and in April of this year, they took it out of the measurement of the CPI. It's a government who is trying real hard to mask just how bad things are with changing the definition of a recession, lying about the employment statistics that every month they keep revising it. Now they'll revise the entire year and down by 1 million jobs, really? And then lying about inflation and money creation. When I was first in the industry, they used to publish something called M3, broadest measurement of the money supply. They cited that as being archaic and expensive, so took it out of circulation. So now trying to decipher how much money is being pumped into the system and then the effects of it through the BLS measurements that lie about inflation, they lie about unemployment. It's certainly very difficult. And I think most people feel something's not right, even if they can't quite articulate it. And then they look at the statistics and we're being told, no, everything's great, right? Everything's great. So you end up feeling, am I crazy or am I the only one feeling this? Or am I conspiratorial or no? Or am I just actually seeing things for what they are? So to me, that's the big thing. And painting pictures of greedy grocery store owners instead of the greedy government that is creating $1 trillion of debt every 100 days, when 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. The most important thing to understand is that every single time, always, inflation is an increase in the money supply. It's a monetary event. You inflate the money supply. Rising prices, and even the way that we're told to understand inflation, the consumer price index, Rising prices are the symptom of inflation. Inflation always is an increase in the money supply, and that is a very large macro trend where the dollar is being viewed as a currency that is being inflated away by many of the countries around the world. So to me, that's the biggest trend that I focus on is the mismanagement of the world reserve currency, and the statistics that supposedly gauge its health are seriously flawed.
Yeah, you mentioned the greedy grocery store owner. That seems to be a topic of discussion lately, especially with all this talk about price controls and alleged price gouging of products and food and energy and all this stuff. Let's talk about price gouging. It's very interesting because when you make these allegations of price gouging, the greedy producer, hasn't the producer had the ability to quote unquote price gouge forever now? What clicked over the last 3 or 4 years to elicit the producer to start price gouging? Walk us through and kind of unravel this point that we've been hearing lately.
Well, the point that is being missed, I mean, in the 4 years this administration has been in office, the CPI has gone up 25.1%, the producer price index up 26.8%, and the cost of farmers to produce, package, and deliver the food is up 30.7%. That's their cost, the input costs as a result of printing more money over the last 4+ years than in the history of the country preceding it. So in essence, they are ignoring what the real cause or what the real root of inflation is. In other words, some people think inflation just means price going up, and they believe all kinds of things because of it, from corporate greed to greedy grocery store owners. But that lets the real culprit off the hook. The real culprit is the government, who creates more and more and more money. And that is inflating the money supply. That is the cause, or the real cause of inflation. If you have more dollars chasing the same amount of goods and services, you see a general rise in the prices. That's price inflation. That's what they're talking about. But price inflation is the symptom of the problem, which is more money chasing those goods and services. And the more you produce money to the degree that we have, look, the Fed's balance sheet at the end of 2008 was 800 billion, and just a few months ago was 9 trillion. It's just under that now, 8+ trillion, because of quantitative tightening. But the point is that that's 8+ trillion dollars that they injected into the system over the last 15 years. And then you look at the Trump administration. Well, they created $8 trillion in debt over his 4 years, and Biden more than that. So all of these administrations, regardless who it is, they're mismanaging the currency tremendously by massive money creation and debt creation. And that is creating a rise in all of the inputs in terms of labor, in terms of oil, in terms of seed, in terms of fertilizer, most of which comes from Russia. Everything has gotten higher in price. And so that has to be passed along to the final product. In essence, they're focusing on price inflation instead of the cause of inflation, which is money creation, period. And so it's treating the symptom rather than the cause.
Yeah, and isn't it also coming from the supply side as well? We're still feeling the ramifications of all these lockdowns and all these disruptions of the supply side.
And that would go to price inflation, to your
Yep.
point. Yes. And there is. When you have distortions or disruptions in the supply chain, you have isolated price inflation. But inflation in general inflation is a 100% every single time, according to Milton Friedman,
Mm-hmm.
always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon, meaning they created more money. But you can exacerbate inflation through price inflation, through distortions of supply chains. You're right, and disruptions in supply chains. So that's true. But when governments and central banks create money out of thin air to sustain their borrowing and spending, that is inflation, period. But when you talk about the effects down chain, sure, you have disruptions in the supply chain and will only exacerbate it. And you can have price inflation without monetary inflation, because let's just pretend the price is stable, but you have supply chain disruptions that would increase the price. But that's not the root cause of it of what we're talking about here. That is an isolated instance based upon a supply chain disruption. But general price inflation is always a monetary phenomenon. It's an increase in the money supply, period.
Yeah. So when it comes to price controls, however, that's another point of discussion that we've been hearing lately. Walk us through why price controls actually make things worse. You see you see inflation, the effects of inflation, prices skyrocketing, the natural inclination for the average guy who doesn't really know the economy as well versus someone like you might. Uh, their natural inclination, why don't we just keep the prices low? Point of fact, if you do that, you send off signals into the economy, bad signals that actually reverberate and create shortages, in which case the price skyrockets to infinity, meaning you're just not able to buy that item anymore because it's just not available vis-a-vis shortages. But walk us through why price controls have been done throughout history and they always fail. Why is that?
Well, first of all, capitalism says that the person who can be most efficient at the best cost, bring the product to market, wins. It inspires and incentivizes efficiency and ingenuity, cost savings, all of these things. That's part of capitalism. Socialism is the opposite of that, where it says, well, you can't make it higher in this price so that everyone can afford it. And in doing that, you disincentivize all of these things. And I'll give you an example. Under Nixon, the price controls, the farmers couldn't sell chicken products at prices high enough to justify feeding the chickens, the cost of it. And so in the early 1970s, the farmers killed over 1 million baby chickens. And the same thing happened with beef and pork industries, where farmers sent pregnant cows to the slaughterhouse while dairy cows were butchered. And that's because the cost of raising the animals to the point where their products can be sent to the market costs more than they're allowed to sell it for. So they say, screw it, I'm out. And so now you have no farmers bringing chicken to the marketplace. So it creates shortages, it creates imbalances. It's the byproduct of intervention. The government intervention never works. The free market is what works. And if you have a free market that says people will buy your product, especially if you are able to bring it to the marketplace with the most efficiency and the best cost and the best quality. So it inspires people to work harder. But socialism and these socialist agendas is the opposite of that. And it's like equality. No, it's not about equality. It's about equal opportunity. And so if everyone has the same opportunity to create a product or a service at the best price with the best efficiency and the best service, they win. That's the whole concept of capitalism, and it is being completely and totally usurped by these agendas that are so horribly mismanaged. And not only that, as you mentioned, not a student of history, therefore doomed to repeat its mistakes. It's failed every time it's ever happened. And it's the greedy governments that cause inflation. It's not the greedy farmers or the greedy grocery store owners or anyone else in between. It's that everyone's cost has gone up. And that's just the way that it is. Now, there are instances where you can say, well, that's pretty damn greedy. I stayed at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas. I ordered a cheeseburger in my room. My wife and I split. Might have been the best cheeseburger I've ever had, but a cheeseburger, French fries, and a Coke was $74. Now, that's greedy. That's price gouging. But I chose to stay at the Wynn Hotel. That's my deal. But when you're talking about going to massive grocery store chains around the country that are stockpiling food from farmers, they're not gouging anyone. They are just passing on the higher costs that it costs the farmers, the truckers, the packagers. Everyone's paying higher costs, so it gets sent to the end user. So capping that just disincentivizes. If you can't make any money and go through all of that, plus the regulations, the red tape, dealing with clients, and with customers, and all of the things that go with running a business, and you can't make any money, well, you say, screw it, I'll do something else, or I just won't do it. And that's why it doesn't work, and it will always end badly. So, here again, talking about price controls is just idiotic, and it sounds good to the average person who's struggling. And that's, inflation hits the poor harder than anybody, because the wealthy people, it's not about their giant bank accounts, is that they all own assets, and inflation, assets go higher. it's the cost of living that it's tougher, putting food on the table. And if you're very wealthy, those things don't bother them, food and gasoline and the things that we take for granted. If you have more money, but people who don't, now it's how do you put food on the table to feed your family, get them clothes and get them ready for school? How do you pay for gas to get back and forth to work? All of these things start to undermine your ability to live a normal, comfortable life. So it's a problem. So they're like, yeah, price controls would be great. They don't understand the ramifications of it. And it just leads to, like you said, shortages and empty grocery store shelves. And even those companies like grocery store chains would just shut down and close down. Or they start, instead of looking like a grocery store, they start to look more like Walmart, and they'll put other things in there that aren't being price controlled, and they'll sell, housewares and things like that instead of food, primarily. And so it's not something that the government should intervene in. It's never worked. It won't work this time. But when you have people struggling the way they are, I'm sure there will be people say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, without ever taking the time to understand the pitfalls of it and how it's never worked before.
Have you seen this test pilot for a publicly funded grocery store? And I believe it was in Chicago or one of these Midwestern states. This was like a few months back. But I get the sense that if we do go down this road, hopefully not, but if we do, that's the next step is, once shortages occur as a result of these policies, you'll see people demanding that we have government funded grocery stores, supermarkets. And it's not going to be pretty. You're not going to get the same level of quality as you would from a Kroger or a Publix or a Whole Foods or whatever from these government facilities. But do you see that? Do you see that as a potential third order or fourth or whatever nth order effect? To
Well, I
these
mean, I
policies.
haven't seen that, but I mean, look, these all these grocery stores have all of the supply chains and all of the relationships with the producers already in place. So you're right. You're not going to get the choices. You're not going to get the quality. It's a lesser option, but it wouldn't surprise me if this current administration retains power. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see things like that. But I don't think it's the solution whatsoever. The solution begins with reining in government spending and money creation. That's where it starts. And trying to intervene in free market capitalism will end badly. And it will end badly for the people who can't afford for it to end that way. Worse, the poor will have, less options, less availability. And you're looking at the rural areas, these grocery stores who can't stay in business. If they shut down, then what? Then what do? You travel 50 miles to go get your food. So these things are very bad. And just turning our back on what made this country great, like capitalism, like inspiring ingenuity and efficiency, you throw that all out the window if it's price capped, and it will end like every other price capping endeavor ever has, poorly. So even if you get a government sponsored or a co-op style grocery store like that, yeah, your options and your quality and all of those things will be massively compromised to a company like Kruger's, who has been making 1 or 2%, if they're lucky, all of these years. And you look at it compared to what greedy Wall Street bankers make, or other industries, even in insurance, the insurance brokers are making 7 or 8% on selling insurance product. Why aren't they considered greedy when they're making 3, 4 times what a grocery store chain is? It's just ignorance and bad precedent, really. I hope for all of our sakes that this isn't the path we go down.
Yeah. So historically speaking, market as analysts in the gold market and the market in general, and just having a keen interest in this stuff, we're supposed to be forward looking. The market is supposed to be forward looking, but I want to look back for a second. If you look at the 1940s, if you look at the 1970s, in both of those instances where we had massive inflation, we had 3 waves of inflation in both cases. Now, in our case, we just came out of our last big hump of inflation. Do you see a secondary or tertiary wave of inflation coming down the pike, given the current conditions of the macro environment, the geopolitical environment? Because remember, we do have multiple wars ongoing right now, and wars are inflationary by definition. you can never find me a deflationary war. So with the current game board in place, do you see a second wave of inflation down the pike?
Yeah, I do. I mean, on multiple levels. Even if the budget was balanced today, who pays for the 160 trillion in unfunded liabilities? Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government military pensions. Who's going to pay for the 20 million people in here illegally for them to be fed and clothed and schooling and medical and housing? Who's going to pay for all of that? Where do all of these programs that Kamala is talking about giving $25,000 to 400,000 first time home buyers, or a $10,000 tax credit, or $6,000 to first time parents to have a child? All of these incentives, who's going to pay for them? Who's going to pay for all of this stuff when at the same time we have weaponized the treasury market, and it is the good graces of our foreign creditors who accumulated our treasuries that have allowed us to live this way. And now much of the world is saying, well, look what they just did to Russia. They took 5 trillion, they or billion, they took 5 billion of their treasuries. They defaulted on it. They stole it. And they are using the proceeds to give to the Ukraine, a country they're in a war against. Why would we ever hold their treasuries when they're inflating away their currency to the tune of $100,000 a second, 24/7, when they weaponize the treasury market against a country? And at the same time, much of the world looks at the things that we do as every bit as egregious or more so than what Russia has done. And so the willingness of our creditors to continue to finance our debt is coming to an end. So not only do you have a problem of a mountain of unfunded liabilities that no one seems to talk about, it's just a $35 trillion debt. Medicare Part B is 99 trillion in the hole. Part D, 22 trillion. Social Security, 77 trillion. Seconds ago is 31,688 years ago. Who's going to pay for this stuff? So inflation is the path that all politicians have chosen over austerity. All of them have chosen that. So yes, I do see, and even with the lying metrics, the bottom line is if no one wants to hold dollars or treasuries anymore, we haven't even begun to see what inflation looks like. But with all else being equal and everything being balanced, no one's talking about all of these liabilities that have to be paid for in an environment where our treasury sales are by the traditional countries that owned our treasuries are falling by the wayside. We're supposed to believe that the United Kingdom and Ireland and the Cayman Islands really are going to hold our treasuries and buy that many. The United Kingdom is a broke country buying the debt of an even more broke country, us. Jim Willie, someone who I respect a lot, says that the Fed's paying them under the table to buy our treasuries to keep the system going. Maybe true, maybe not, don't know. But any way you look at it, every politician and every system since the Roman times have chosen inflation over austerity. Inflation will come roaring back, and it's higher than we are led to believe. If you go just simply to JohnWilliamsShadowStats.com, he'll tell you, just based upon the way they used to calculate inflation, that it's about 11% right now, not the 3% we're being told it is. It's a lie. I wish it was only 3%. But yeah, I do think inflation is a persistent problem and will get much worse, and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, and also throughout history, at least here in the United States, what we've seen before is gold confiscation, and it's a question I get sometimes, not oftentimes, but here and there. I kind of want to get your opinion on this. What is the likelihood that we see another round of gold confiscation? Let's say, because it's really interesting. Gold is making new all-time highs. Silver is pretty, it's moving sideways. There really isn't a discernible trend yet in silver. But you also see a weakening oil price. Oil is getting a little de-risked now. But the fact that you're seeing a gold, a pretty significant move up in the gold price, to me tells me that there's a lot of crisis hedging going on. This isn't your typical, precious metals bull market. Otherwise, silver would be moving in tandem, if not faster than gold. But with this in view, given the current likelihood of a currency reset sometime down the line, what's the chances that we do see gold confiscations, happening here in the United States or elsewhere?
I don't think gold will be confiscated. When Roosevelt confiscated gold right over my shoulder there in 33, gold was currency. Everybody owned it. And it was a different time. There was patriotism abound, but everyone had it in their possession. Gold was money. Now it's not. The allocation of gold in the United States is 1/2 of 1% from Joe and Jane Sixpack to the Harvard Endowment Fund. The consequences globally would be severe if our creditors and the rest of the world feared Venezuelan style nationalization of assets and eminent domain the way that Venezuela did things. No one would trust us again. We're already low on the trust right now. So instead, you have two ETFs, SLV and GLD. SLV is the largest stockpile of silver in the world, and it's administered by JP Morgan and BlackRock. JP Morgan, who paid the largest fine the Justice Department ever laid out for manipulating the metals market, is still allowed to be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust. And JP Morgan and HSBC Bank are involved in custodianship of GLD, the fourth or fifth largest stockpile of gold in the world. So they can come in on a Friday night, close those two accounts, put everyone's money in the money market, be sitting on the largest stockpile of silver and the fourth or fifth largest of gold, held by the bullion banks that suppress the market, and say, what? Well, we didn't do anything. We didn't activate eminent domain. We just closed these two accounts. And this is our right. You can still buy physical metal. Now, as far as silver, did I share my screen with you a week or two ago and show you those charts?
Yeah, you did. When we
Yeah, and so I mean, to me, there's a lot more to silver than meets the eye as to why it's not going higher. But I will tell you, on top of, and people should go back and look at those charts because you have 8 banks in the West holding down the price of silver to the largest concentrated short position ever in any commodity ever traded. This is not normal, and I believe has a lot to do with the military-industrial complex. We've talked a lot about India importing over 700 million ounces of silver over the last 3 years, and much more than that probably, which is 10 times more than there are bars available for delivery on the COMEX. And we've talked about 3 billion ounces of silver traded per day on the LBMA. That's 3.5 times annual global mine supply, with only 300 million ounces available to be delivered. They're distorting the price through paper deliveries. I think I probably last week talked to you about the validation I've had from two mining executives who told me China's flying all around the world buying silver from
mm,
Latin American mines in unrefined form, doré, bar, and concentrate, as much as they can buy, doubling the price that the West will pay for it and shipping it home and refining it there. It's not coming off of an exchange. No one noticed it. This comes from the second largest producer of silver in the world, China. They have now, as of just recently, become a net um, importer instead of a net exporter because they produce so many and mine so many byproduct metals. They stumble across silver. The majority of silver that comes to market is a byproduct of mining other metals. Only 20% of the silver that came to market, 25% last year, was from companies that specifically mine silver. And that's because it's found in nature called in a form called epithermal near the surface. Epidermis, your skin,
hmm
epithermal very near the surface. Big deposits were found a long time ago. So we've talked about all that. But now to find that silver or China's becoming a net importer instead of a net exporter, which they were a huge exporter, is massive. And I think that's something people need to understand is that the Chinese and the Indians are beating us at the game by using the suppression of the paper price by the West to drain the shelves. And they're going as far as buying unrefined silver all around Latin and South America, paying double what the West will pay so they can refine it at home, not pulling it off of an exchange. Therefore, it's not reflected in the higher price. So I think silver is still the most undervalued asset in the world, 100%. But it's not gold, and gold is the only other tier one asset that the central banks are buying. There's something big in store for gold. But there's a 90% correlation throughout all of history and movement between gold and silver. Silver will come along for the ride and it will slingshot and outperform gold percentage wise when it finally is allowed to reach its fair price. And if you take gold right now at its all-time high or pretty damn close to it of let's see, what do we got here? Real darn close to 25.15. And we divide that by 7, which is what it's coming out of the ground at. That's $360 an ounce.
hmm
If you divide it by 42, which would be the average price that man has set it at, even independent of its geologic ratio being much lower than that, right now, which is the 150-year average, 42, you get $60 an ounce. Silver has been distorted in its value, and the only way to suppress or manipulate a market over an extended period of time is to push it in the direction it's going. And no one ever wanted to stand for delivery on these exchanges, but that's changing. See, these countries are now motivated, coordinated, sophisticated, wealthy, and cunning, and they are using our own suppression of the markets to drain them and to use our leverage against us. They don't have to fire missiles at us to win. They just have to take all of the strategic commodities at subsidized prices because these exchanges have a delivery mechanism built into them that no one ever did forever until now. And they're coming from sovereign wealth funds and sovereign governments who are saying, yeah, we'll stand for delivery. Thank you. So these exchanges are being bled dry, and they're using the Western price to their advantage. The only reason they're not bitching is because they're accumulating. Once they've accumulated enough, and the COMEX or the LBMA is exposed as a Ponzi scheme, just as Bernie Madoff was running a good business until they discovered he wasn't. And when people asked for delivery, give me my money back, it all blew up. Oh, that's how this will blow up. And these countries were never sophisticated, motivated, or coordinated enough, or wealthy enough. They are now, and this is how we're going to lose. And this is what they've been doing. So for those people holding on to silver and wondering why it's so counterintuitive and gold keeps going higher, it's because there's a vested interest. And I believe it lies squarely in the military industrial complex's role of creating high tech weapons that need silver. That's why they've held it down. That's why 8 banks from the West are stepping on silver. It's as dumb as a mud wall. When the whole rest of the world is accumulating it, it will end poorly. And that's why I think we're getting close to the ending of the suppression in silver. It's just a game that will put you out of business if you're naked short and you're not able to deliver when it's called upon. If the exchanges go force majeure and stop allowing delivery, well, that's the same thing as a default. And then the whole thing blows up. So, yeah, I think we're closer than we've ever been. Gold will be the backbone of a new system. Silver is the most undervalued asset in the world and should be part of everyone's portfolio.
Awesome. Well, I do have an update from the COMEX and New York Metals Exchange. Just recently, a couple of days ago, actually, they released new guidance. I don't know if you've heard about this, but move it starting on January 1st, 2025, and moving forward. All gold bars are required to have their production date printed on them. Now, this has gotten many people on Twitter to start speculating, maybe they're going to start confiscating bars after a certain production date. Is that why they would want to have that new protocol in place? But I want to get to your take here, Andy. Why would the COMEX, why would the New York Metals Exchange, why would they add in this new guideline? Or is it just simply a nothing burger?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it has something to do with where the gold is sourced from. It's a good question. I haven't heard that. I'm actually impressed that you pulled that up, and that's all the research I do. I haven't heard that. I don't know. When Germany requested all of their gold back from the U.S., one of the pushbacks was that these are bars. These aren't the original bars. Where are original bars that you've supposedly been safekeeping? So maybe that has something to do with it being sourced by reputable and you know ESG compliant refineries or whatnot, or countries. I don't know. It's a good question, but it certainly lets the mind wander, because you can pull gold out of a ship that's been in the bottom of the ocean for 300 years and it looks the same once cleaned up as it did when it was first minted or refined. So I don't know. That's something I'll dig into, and next week when we talk, I'll have an answer for you.
Fantastic. Well, we did allude to the all-time high spike in gold. It seems like it's a weekly thing now. Like every time I talk to you, Andy, it's like, oh, new all-time high in gold. But oil's been a little weak, fairly weak actually. It appears de-risked given all of the geopolitical risks going on around the world. Why do you think oil and gold have somewhat diverged in their trajectories right now? Shouldn't in times like this, shouldn't both move in tandem, or is it simply or is gold just simply tracking, I guess, acting more as a financial hedge, whereas oil is acting more as a geopolitical hedge? And right now, oil isn't seeing anything major coming down the pike, foreseeably, on the geopolitical stage.
See, and I wouldn't say that
Okay.
because I mean, first of all, in 2020, oil hit negative 40 a barrel. Now, tell me how the hell that happens. Negative $40 a barrel because this was in the middle of COVID and you had all of the tankers sitting outside the ports, couldn't get in. And so negative 40 a barrel. That's the consequence of having the futures market control the price rather than the underlying commodity. And with what the Middle East has turned into a powder keg, you would think oil should be going much higher. But after all, it is an election year. And while the American public wouldn't know a gold coin if it fell on their foot, they certainly understand the cost of filling up their gas tank. And if the Democrats have gasoline way high and oil way high into an election, maybe that has something to do with it. Where here again, this is the part that pisses off much of the world. In fact, the grain exchange for BRICS was just founded, and the head of the grain exchange said, we produce more wheat than the West does, and we consume more than they do, yet we have no control over its price. It's all controlled on the COMEX. Well, the same thing would be true about oil. And these countries that are producing the majority of the oil around the globe are all part of or joining the BRICS, or every one of them's on the Belt Road. Yet the price is primarily controlled on COMEX. So it's this is the pushback that the West has been able to manipulate and control things, and I believe you will see all sorts of exchanges move eastward. In fact, over the last 200 days, the combined volume of the Shanghai Gold Exchange has outpaced the COMEX. It's now the number two highest volume trading metals exchange on the planet. You'll see that with all of the world's commodities because we're distorting them for political reasons. My guess is, I mean, if you think about it, oil should be way higher because you're talking about major wars, in the Middle East. Iran is an OPEC country. And if Israel and Iran get into something serious, Israel has the fifth generation bombers that can fly undetected and they will destroy their oil refineries. And at that point, what happens to the price of oil? Now, that's just hypothetical, but when you think about oil saying, I don't see any problem ahead, to me, no, it's more along the lines of the commercial banks at the behest of the Western elite that say, let's short some oil here and keep it low because it's an election year. We need to keep our meal ticket going. So that would be my initial thought. I don't know. I mean, it seems counterintuitive to me that oil would be, especially in the middle of summer, although we're getting to the end where people drive a lot more and stuff, where oil typically higher. I would say it doesn't make sense to me other than it being a primary election year.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to gold and silver, I mean, like you've said before, and like I've said here on this channel before, possession is 9/10 of the law. I'm in a lot of these commodity stocks, that we talk about in this channel, but it's always great to have something physical in your hands. And, I can't recommend, your company enough, Andy. Be sure to email him at info@milesfranklin.com and tell him that Capital Cosm sent you to see what the special pricing is for the week. And Andy, anything else you want to bring to the table before we wrap things up?
No, I'm just grateful to be here. You're opening up people's eyes to what's happening. Um, I guess I could read something interesting here. I mean, this isn't really huge, but I think it's interesting. And my father sent me this just the other day. I'm gonna make it bigger so I can read it. And oh boy, I hope I can read this. Let me see if I can zoom this in a little bit real quick, and then I'll let you run. Let's zoom in because I can hardly see a darn thing. All right, this was a newspaper article printed in 1954, and it says, "I am a student of law college age. Um, I am a student of law. Oh, I'm sorry. I am a student of law whose age is 85. My first year of college was 68 years ago. One class I took was political science. A half page of my textbook essentially outlined a few steps to overturn a democracy. Here they are. Number one, divide the nation philosophically. Number two, foment racial strife. Number three, cause distrust of police authority. Number four, swarm the nation's borders indiscriminately and uncontinuously. Number five, engender the military strength to weaken it. Number six, overburden citizens with more unfair taxation. Number seven, encourage civil rioting and discourage accountability for all crime. Number eight, control all balloting. Number nine, control all media. What was printed in 1954 as a possible diabolic nightmare has become an emerging reality. Hope that Americans will unite enough to pen a good finish. Go dwelling. And it's from Keith M. Alber of California. It was in the newspaper. Um, you think about it, all of those things are
Sounds
happening.
familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think when I come on your show, which I'm rather grateful. It's not about buying gold and silver to become wealthy. It's because what is happening is the ramifications of what is happening and the direction that our leadership is taking us in has consequences I don't think most people can really grasp. And so it's not about becoming wealthy. It's about owning real wealth. If you don't think like a contrarian right now, I think you're going to be a victim. I keep saying that, but I mean it sincerely. And I think as we get closer to the election, we're just 3+ months away. These things are going to start to accelerate. So yeah, I think you are more emblematic of the news as our media is leading us into a very bad place, and getting behind a politician who received no votes at all, who doesn't understand the first bit about economics, about inflation, about money creation, and is creating massive divisiveness by vilifying people we should all be thankful for, those people who have built reputable grocery store chains across the country. That's not an easy thing to do. I am close with, very close with the owner of one of the largest grocery store chains in the United States, and it is not true. So I think people need to do a little bit of due diligence, a little bit of research, read the writings of Milton Friedman, who talks about Austrian economics and the cause of inflation and the cause of of what money creation does. Spend a little time digging, understand the concepts that we're talking about. I think it'll go a long way. But like I said, I'm really honored to be here with you. And I think that over the next 90 to 120 days, it'll be the most interesting time in our lives. I'm looking forward to riding shotgun with you and talking about all of the changes. And you'll find that I will continue to harp on a few central topics. And that's been my mantra for the past 4 years. And they've all of these things are coming true, which is very concerning to me. The things I keep talking about, they're coming true and accelerating. So I guess I would just simply say, bear with me if anything seems somewhat redundant. I will continue to add new information to support this thesis that is now 4 years long. And I will say the most frightening part about it is literally everything I've said in over 3,000 videos that are out there for people to go see. When no one was talking about it, it's all coming true. And I'm not a soothsayer or have a crystal ball. I had the good fortune of stumbling across a bunch of things that I've been able to put together. And I really don't like what I see. And when you add into it what's happening now with what appears to be, this love affair with Kamala and Tim Walz, he's the reason I left Minnesota. For his policies. So this is not about anything other than trying to let people know the truth. And I'm honored to be here with you because you seem to grasp it better than most of the people I talk to each week. So thank you for that, and thank you for the opportunity. And look forward to picking up where we left off next week or the week after.
Yeah, for sure. It's always a pleasure having you on, Andy. And if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give us a like, comment down below. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of our takes. Really interested to get your thoughts here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. 5 to 6 times a week, we post videos. So you don't want to miss an episode. Hit that subscribe button, and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye, y'all.